Welcome back to episode 4 of the $750 Marketplace Tandem Axle trailer rebuild. In this episode, we're going to finish up the last remaining part of structural stuff that needs to be repaired. So this top rail that's broken off, we're going to get rid of this. So that's going to fix all these deficiencies as well. And then we're going to weld on this spare tire mount that we built in episode 3, and that is going to go somewhere right in there. And as you can see, we've got our new tires mounted to the trailer. And if you watched last week's episode, you'll notice that I got this little back wall up, and I've still got this little side wall to do. That's what this material is right here. That will probably also be in an upcoming episode. Things that we still have left to do: we've got to rewire the trailer. We've got to fix these fenders, which is going to be re-rolling them, making them hopefully somewhat like new again. We've got some welding to do because somebody's cut into it. We do have some structural repairs back here. This part of the back of the trailer's broke, and we still got to build a tailgate. Sounds like a lot, but it's pretty straightforward, and I'm really enjoying having this little overhead thing. Got a lot of materials still over here that I got to clean up because obviously I'm still working on enclosing this carport in a little bit, but I'm making progress. So the first thing I want to do is start working on cutting off this top rail, and we can replace it. Here we are at a critical step in the rebuild, cutting out the old damaged metal. Before we can add any new, we need to make sure that the foundation is solid. This old metal has seen better days, but with every cut we're making room for a fresh start. The goal here is to remove any rusted or weak sections to ensure that the new metal will fit and bond perfectly. As you can see, the metal here has been through a lot. It's got some serious corrosion and wear from years of use. Before we cut, I'm carefully assessing the damage and making sure that we can cut just the right amount. We don't want to remove too much, but we need to get rid of any compromised sections to make sure the trailer stays strong and secure after the new metal is welded in. Precision is key when cutting out damaged metal so the new pieces fit in seamlessly. I'm using a grinder with a cutoff wheel for this job. It's all about making sure we don't create extra work down the line. Too much cutting can throw off the fit of the new metal, and that can lead to more headaches when we start welding. Yeah, that was a piece of cake. That wasn't too bad. Now we'll clean up all our areas all around here, get all that cleaned up, get this ground up real nice. Same thing here, do that to all of these, and then we'll go fabricate another one of these and get it all welded in. Now that the old metal is cut out, we're left with a clean slate. This is when the real magic happens. With the damaged parts gone, we can start prepping for the new metal to fit. I'm going to make sure that the edges are smooth and even so the new metal can be welded in securely. This prep work is crucial. If the edges are rough or uneven, it can cause gaps, leading to weak joints and a compromised rebuild. Even though the metal we're cutting out seems like a small part of the project, it actually plays a huge role. Every little detail counts in a trailer rebuild, from how you cut out the old metal to how you fit and weld the new. These small steps lay the foundation for everything that comes next, and I'm making sure to get them right. Sorry about all the noise, guys. It's raining out. I can't control it, but now that we've got all of this stuff prepped and ready to weld, let's go in the workshop and cut ourselves a new piece of angle. Let's measure up this old one and see what it's got to be. 76 inches. What do we say? 76. Alright, double check it one last time before we make our cut. 76. It's the next day. Things are looking much better today. There's no more rain like yesterday, and it's going to be fairly warm. So with our new piece all cut, I've gone through and ground back any mill scale. Wherever we're going to be welding into the trailer, you can see here I've removed the mill scale. If you don't remove the mill scale, it'll probably still work, but in my opinion, it's just not going to be as good. You're going to get some impurities in there and potential strength issues. So I always try to clean my material best I can. And to weld this up, I'm going to be using my mobile machine. This is what I use for all my mobile work. I'm using 7018 3/32 rods. We got it set for 1/8 inch material. which is going to give me a parameter of about 85 amps. I'm set for 5 on hot start and 5 on arc force. Alright, flush on that side. Flush on this side. Good. Bring you in a little bit closer so you can see all the fit up. Ground it on the inside there because we're going to get weld there as well. Up under there. You can see over here and on the side and underneath. So we'll be able to get a lot of weld on this. Then we're going to round the corners after. Welding in different positions like overhead, horizontal, or vertical adds another challenge to the mix. If you're welding overhead or at an angle, it can get a bit trickier because the molten metal wants to drip down. But with practice, you'll get the hang of it. Consistency is the key in stick welding. I'm trying to make sure each pass is uniform, no gaps or voids as I weld. I'm constantly monitoring the pool, the arc, and the speed of my hand to make sure everything flows smoothly. A clean, consistent weld ensures the strength and durability of the joint we're making. Oftentimes when you're welding overhead, you're going to need to lower your amperage just a little bit because that molten puddle has a tendency to want to drip down. I ended up V'ing this out a little too much, so I ended up putting a second pass in it just because it wasn't full enough. There, and I can clean up those little BBs later. Probably really didn't need to, you know, V it out as much as I did, but... Once it's cool, I'll inspect the weld for any flaws like undercut, porosity, or cracks. If there's an issue, I'll fix it before moving on. Each weld needs to be strong and reliable. And this one might be a little bit trickier because it's got that big gap at the top, so probably just have to end up turning my amps down and just slowly filling that in. I'm not worried about it though. The way the original one was, it was only welded on the top anyways. I'm welding down the vertical and across the top, so I'm actually getting twice as much weld on it as there was before. I think one of the most important things about welding is make sure you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable, you're not going to get a good weld. I don't care how good of a welder you are, you've got to be comfortable. That's the number one key to getting a good weld. So if you're just starting out, practice welding something easy, like on the flat, something that's, you know, easy to get to and that you can brace yourself and be comfortable. This stuff here, welding overhead and vertical, never fun. Having a little bit of a gap in your metal isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you don't want an overly excessive gap because that's going to cause weakness because you're bridging too much metal. That's kind of what I have here. It's just a little too big. If I had a gap, say the thickness of the welding electrode itself, that's pretty good because that allows you to build what's called a keyway, and that allows you to burn in both pieces of metal. But I'm just having to do a little bit of filling here. Yeah. That didn't go too bad. The key to that, guys, is shove your rod way in. It's like kind of like when you're making a keyhole when you're welding. You just keep the rod shoved in. If you long arc it, you're going to blow it out. It's not going to win a beauty contest, but you know what? It does what it needs to do, and that's hold this top rail on. All we got left now is to just radius these corners, and then this whole front bar will be done. We're going to end up stripping this whole trailer in the spring, and we're going to end up coating it with a product called Chassis Saver, and that's salt and chemical, gas, oil, everything. It's a super industrial coating. It's pretty expensive, but it's awesome stuff, and it's really tough. And then after that, then we can just, you know, undercoat the underside, you know, every year or so, just like we do our cars here with fluid film or wool wax or whatever you prefer, and that will keep this trailer good for many, many years. Let's get these corners radiused, and then we can weld on our spare tire mount. A bunch of different ways we can do this. A lot of times I use like a flat washer, but for this, I'm just going to use this spray can and put a little mark on there. That way we know it's going to be even from one side to the next. For me, this is where things really start to get fun. I love doing the details like this. I think that these are the parts that really set off your project. I'm going over it and make sure there's no sharp edges and that everything looks and feels good. I couldn't help myself. I had to put a coat of paint on it. It's probably all gonna peel off anyways, but just makes me feel better knowing that, that it's protected a little bit now. I think I want that spare tire mount like centered between those two, you know, vertical pieces right there. I think that that will look good. Kind of keeps it back a little bit closer to the axle. So what I've done is I just kind of basically put a mark on either side of this and down here, because we've got to clean all the paint off and get it all cleaned up, just like we did on the front.
I often refer to welding as having a lot of similarities to painting. The reason for that is painting is actually the smallest part of the project. It's all the prep that leads up to the painting, the sanding, the masking, the prep. Well, that's what it is with welding. There is just so much involved before you can weld. You've got to do prep work, cleaning, sanding, grinding, smoothing, and all the fabrication. The weld is actually the smallest part of the project.
Give it a once over. Make sure everything's perfect before we nail it. Yep, because I'm cheap, now I'll start using up some of my spent rods from when I was out of position, but now I'm in position, so I'll use up these rods, these little shorties.
I wanted to bring up something that not a lot of people talk about, and sometimes you'll see welders and their face will be right up close into that weld puddle, and it's usually because they can't see the weld puddle very well. Well, the problem with that is that your head in your body is right over all of those welding fumes. Even if you have a respirator on, I try to stay out of those fumes. As you can see right here, I'm welding. My head's probably 3 feet away, and I'm completely out of those welding fumes. I think it's just a good habit to try to get into. If you need to use some readers or something to magnify your weld, it's good to keep your head out of those welding fumes.
That is going to work out awesome. So while that paint is drying, let's go finish the last little bit of structural work we've got at the back of the trailer. It's got a 2x4 spacing this away because this broke off. They built doors for the back of this and it wasn't intended to have those. It's all cleaned up, but it's a little out of square. Not by much, but just a little bit. So I'm going to put a ratchet strap on it. It's got to go in a little bit. That's probably it right there. It didn't have to go much. That's it right there. Perfect.
One other thing to talk about is consistency of your weld. That just takes practice. The only way you're going to get good and have a good looking bead is just to take your time and practice at it. It doesn't happen overnight, but it usually happens pretty quick if you follow some fundamentals. I mentioned some of them already, and that is staying comfortable. If you're not comfortable when you're welding, your hand's going to be shaky, your travel speed's going to be off. It's just going to be hard to get a real consistent weld.
Get some weld across the top and we will be in good shape.
And this next part might be a little controversial, but this is just my opinion. I think for someone who's starting out stick welding, I'd say you could get by with 2 welding electrodes. Some 6011 1/8 inch and some 3/32 7018. 6011 is all around good general purpose rod. You can weld through a bunch of stuff. You don't have to get things super clean, and it requires a little bit of manipulation, and some 7018 for a nice top cap. That's my personal opinion.
Sometimes you have to work with the forces, so the reason I did the vertical here and then saved this for last, because I knew that this top piece would pull it in that little bit that I needed to get it perfectly in square, and it should be right now, and it is. Yep. Looks good. Nice and square, nice and solid, and not only did I weld it along here, I also welded it up underneath, so I welded it more places than the factory had welded it before. Be sure to tune in next week where we are going to fabricate our tailgate, but for right now, let's get our tire mounted up on that spare tire mount. And for lug nuts, I'm using the same diameter as the ones on the wheels for the trailer. That way you can use a 4-way lug wrench and remove your spare tire. And to keep people from stealing it, I'm just going to buy one of those locking lug nuts that you use a key, and that'll keep this from getting stolen off the trailer. Then in the spring, we'll sandblast these wheels, make it look really nice. There it is. And just like that. Like I said, I'll get one of those locking lug nuts. That way no one can steal it off the trailer. It'll look clean that way too. Clean these wheels up, sandblast them, paint them white. They're going to look really good. And that's all there is to it, guys. New videos every Friday, so stay tuned next week where we're going to be building a tailgate. We still got a few other things left to do to this trailer. We've got to do wiring, we've got to do decking, and a few other miscellaneous things like straightening out the fenders. Until next week, guys, I will see you then. Take care, stay safe, and God bless. Please like, comment, subscribe. See ya.